Servus and welcome to another episode of the Pro Hockey Pod, episode 83. You know what we're doing again this week. We're back to the coaches series. Just been rolling them out recently. And like I said, it's been very successful. The views have been up. I think I've been getting a lot of good feedback too, just kind of hearing about everyone's path, how they got to where they are, the different types of levels they've coached in. I think it's great for the listeners out there. This week, another guy from the D3 route. So someone I can relate to. I obviously end up going the D3 route. And I'm always proud when I have guests on who went that route and now are continuing to stay in hockey these days. So another guy that I mentioned started at D3, got into coaching in D3 right after, then got up to the D1 level, and now is the head coach at the University of Mont. Happy to have him on. Welcome to the podcast, Stephen Wiedler.
Thanks for having me on, Andrew. Yeah, excited to be on here and talk with you today.
We always go back to the beginning. I think that's always where we like to start, right? So going off of elite prospects, so excuse it if it's a little wrong, but I believe you were born in Farmingville, New York, like obviously the state of New York area. Like what is maybe the first childhood memory you have of growing up in that area, or maybe, what first drew you to the sport of hockey?
Yeah, I mean that strictly goes to my dad and my grandfather, and they grew up Ranger fans. So Farmingville's on Long Island. It's right in the middle of Long Island, New York, um, which has become pretty much a hockey hotbed in the Northeast. But when I was growing up, it wasn't as much, and yeah, just lucky that my dad had a passion for it. I started out playing roller hockey for a long time. I finally got on the ice when I was 10 or 11 years old and never really looked back. But yeah, first memories are playing roller hockey in the driveway with my dad and my brother. And yeah, that's kind of that was the passion from day one with those guys and watching Ranger games at night with him.
So coming from the New York area there, I was always curious, but you kind of answered it. Like who was your allegiance to? Was it the Rangers, the Islanders? But you just mentioned it was obviously the Rangers.
Yeah, it was the Rangers. I grew up Brian Leach, Mark Messier, Mike Richter, Adam Graves, the 94 Cup team. So I'm an 86 birth year. So, I was in like second grade when they won. And, but my grandfather is from New York City. The Islanders didn't exist when he was growing up. And there was really only one hockey team to root for in New York City. So he grew up a Rangers fan and then instilled that in my dad, and then dad passed it down to me, and I'm not going against those two guys. So I grew up a Ranger fan for sure.
You made the smart move there. For someone who's never, I'm a Leafs fan, so yeah, you know the pain I go through every year. But how was it for you just to kind of witness that, like your favorite team winning? I know you said you were in second grade, I believe, but still, it must have been just crazy time in the state of New York.
Yeah, I think obviously it's a long time ago. I do have one memory of when they won that from my childhood of falling asleep, in the game 7 game to win the cup, and my dad grabbing me and carrying me out and waking me up and making me watch the on TV on the celebration. So, um, that's really my only memory from that. Outside of there was one game in that playoffs where um, Mike Keenan pulled Mike Richter and put Glenn Healy in, and for whatever reason, that's the other. I don't even know what game that was of the playoffs, but I remember that too because I was so young. I didn't even know, you know, Mike Richter was like everything in New York, so I didn't even know there was another goalie. And when they did that, I had no idea that was even a thing. So those are my only two memories. Is that one of the games Keenan pulled Mike Richter, and the other one, my dad woke me up and told me I had to see this, or I would remember it for the rest of my life. So, and I do. So those are my only two memories from back then. But then, obviously, when going into MSG with him and my grandfather and my brother, and just taking the Long Island Railroad in and getting over to MSG as a kid and watching those games was unbelievable. And yeah, so I don't have a ton of memories from '94, but I definitely have a ton of memories through my youth of traveling in to watch Ranger games. And honestly, I remember more than anything else just being parked in front of the TV with my dad at nights and watching the games on the old box TVs.
Well, those are always great memories, and good on your dad for waking you up there. You get to see the the biggest one in your lifetime so far, I would say. So and yeah, anyone who knew Mike Keenan, you knew there as a goalie, it was a goalie's worst nightmare. The amount of stories from Chicago and all that that I've heard over the years of just pulling goalies. So yeah, but Mike Richter, like that made me think of like his mask was so uh influential, I would say, growing up. And I remember like McDonald's the one year did like the giveaways of the mask. It was like him, Patrick Wall and stuff. So I remember I was collecting those, but that's funny. He was a very flexible goalie and obviously very important to their cup run. But back to your story here. What was like kind of like your minor hockey path like? Because obviously for me, like in Canada, like we have in most towns, you know, you have triple A, you have double A, single A, and then obviously house league, all this stuff. And like for me being Canadian, I'm not very familiar with the American side of it. So what was kind of like your minor hockey path growing up?
Yeah, like I said, I grew up playing roller hockey, and that was mostly roller hockey at the time, and I'm sure it still is, was pretty big on Long Island. Um, and yeah, I just played with like the local kids. We obviously joined a team in a league and stuff, but just the kids from my town that I grew up with, we all played on a team together. And then yeah, when I was around 10 or 11 years old, I remember my dad talking to me in the summer one time and said like, is, do you want to play real hockey? Essentially is what he said to me. Um, and I jumped at the opportunity and he threw me into a house league and I never looked back since. And then um, trying to think after playing house league for a few years, I mean, I was really bad at ice hockey. I was awful. Couldn't stand up, really struggled. And I was lucky enough to get linked up with back then we used to call them power skating coaches. He was really my skills development coach in every area of hockey. His name was Matt Dixon, and he taught me how to be a hockey player more than anybody else. And then I started playing double A travel. I played high school hockey and then took off to juniors from there. So yeah, but my youth hockey, I played roller hockey till I was 11. Then I played double A and high school hockey on Long Island till my senior year of high school, and then took off to junior. Never played triple A until junior A in after high school.
And like for someone who was like playing in high school and that, like obviously as you know in Canada, like the main focus for us growing up is the major junior route. Like that's the first thing we're kind of taught about or influenced about. And like had you ever thought of that route or like did you have friends that were like thinking about that route or was it, you know, being in the States, it was always like, hey, I want to go get my education. I want to try to go the NCAA route.
Yeah, I think I grew up watching Hockey East and college hockey. Anytime that was on TV, I was obviously watching it, being a Northeast guy. But I did have a friend. I had a couple friends that were really good that more so when I got to high school, like ninth and 10th grade. One guy that played for the NTDP was Joe Grimaldi from the town over from me. Went to the same high school. We were friends growing up through high school. And he got drafted. I can't remember, maybe the Ottawa 67s. I can't remember exactly where he got drafted, but he uh, he was a guy that left after 10th grade to go to the NTDP, and that kind of opened my eyes to there was a different world out there outside of hockey on Long Island. I didn't even understand where Joe was going when he left, and when I never heard of the NTDP program before, and he went on to play Division One, and I think he played Major Junior, and he had a long pro career. But yeah, that kind of opened my eyes to it. But for me personally, the whole time, I would have loved to play college hockey at the Division One level. I think Maine won a national championship around 99 or 2000, somewhere around there. I remember watching that on TV and thinking it was the coolest thing in the world. And that was kind of the path that I wanted to go. And I ended up not playing D1 and playing D3, but I don't think major junior. One, I was never good enough to ever get drafted by a major junior team growing up, and they weren't looking to the double A players on Long Island to draft them. But yeah, so I just was hunting down college hockey since day one.
Well, I mean, I guess that keeps your focus kind of on one goal, which, you know, can help because sometimes, like, as you know, like the rules are different now, but for many kids growing up before it was a huge decision to make at such a young age. Or at 16 years old, 17 years old, are you going to go the major junior route or are you going to go the NCAA route? So We'll get into that rule change later, but you ended up first going D3 to Elmira College. First of all, I want to say I played a lot of times in that rink at Oswego. I remember like it had like that kind of like white bubble feel of the arena, like really high ceiling. And the for anyone who's never been there, this is something you need to see. The lighting was like you were playing like outside in a park with like the baseball stadium lights. So like it would be trippy as a goalie. Like you would see like a shadow and you would like follow it and
Shadows.
then you realize it's just like it's nothing. Like you didn't know if it was the puck or what it was. But
Yeah.
yeah, like how was your experience there for that year at Elmira?
I loved it. I committed there after playing junior A and didn't get the opportunity to play Division One. And then I had a good number of Division Three opportunities, and I chose Elmira for a bunch of different reasons. Like I really like the coaching staff. Aaron Saul, who's the head coach now, was the assistant back then when I signed on, and um, and then the campus. Like I loved the campus. I thought it had a really cool college feel to it. It was a lot of fun, and my year there was great. Some of my guys that I came in with that freshman class, I'm still very tight with, even though I only played there for a year. And then the Thunderdomes, like you're saying, they're unique, man. And the first time I went in there was a really cool experience. And yeah, the lighting is something that you've never seen before. So I guess the story on that, and I don't want to get this wrong. So if anybody from EC is listening, and this is a fable or the real story, I don't know. But when they designed the domes, the way that they painted the ceilings, the lights were supposed to shine up into the ceiling and then reflect down. And then they used one of the old Zambonis that had, I don't know what it used to run, but it turned the top of the domes kind of brown. And that whole architecture didn't work anymore to reflect the light back down. And they installed those big, just like you said, they're like lights from a baseball field at night, like just on a big stand. And then they positioned the Canadian American flag kind of in a weird spot that, they're just seeing shadows on the ice at different points and stuff. But what a cool experience. I love that place. We had a really good team when I was there. They taught me a lot about winning and pride in your logo and pride in your team. And there was a real winning culture there when I was there for a year. And, didn't play, but, learned a lot in that freshman year on work ethic and everything else.
Yeah, the lighting, as you said, it was like outside, but also like it was like tinted yellow at times because of like the roof. So like as I said, if you didn't know what you're getting into and you'd never been there before, it was pretty trippy. I got my first game in or my first game my junior year in D3 was in there and had to go in when our goalie got hurt. So it was fun though, like good games always, as you mentioned. Like I thought it was a cool rink and I actually liked their logo, I liked their colors. I thought it was a cool concept. So you mentioned you didn't get to play that season, but you learned a lot about winning. You know, still have a bunch of friends from there to this day. After that year, you end up transferring, I believe. Was it
Yeah.
was that decision based on like, you didn't feel like you were going to get the opportunity, or was it something else? Was it academics? Because obviously you end up going to the University of Southern Maine.
Yeah. So Um, the quick snapshot version of that is I went into the head coach at the time was Tim Zaglarski. Um, and the back step, I was recruited by Aaron Saul, like I had mentioned, but then Sauly left to be the head coach at Potsdam during my freshman year. So he recruited me in the spring, and then by summer he wasn't around anymore. He was the head coach at Potsdam. And I went in for a spring meeting with the head coach, and it seemed positive. It seemed like I was going to come back and be a player and crack the top six with the decor. And then when I came back in the fall, that just wasn't the case. And I remember having a talk with him in the fall, like halfway through the year. And he said, if you want to be a mainstay player, I don't think it'll be here at Elmira. And I just remember saying to him, if that's what I want to do you think I should transfer? And he said, if that's what you want, you should transfer. So there was no portal back then or anything else. There was like some weird um, process that you had to fill out with the NCAA on paper. And then there were rules back then with transferring. Like I couldn't even transfer within our league. And there was something else with between the ECAC East and the SUNYAC, or ECAC West and the SUNYAC, where I couldn't transfer there either. So it really limited down the number of schools that I could go to. And I got really lucky that Jeff Beanie at Southern Maine, he had recruited me before when I committed to Elmira, and he didn't have an ego. And when I became available again, he called me again and had me come up for a visit. And I fell in love with the place. And I owe Jeff pretty much everything because he gave me a second chance at playing college hockey and a second chance at my hockey career of any kind. So, yeah, it was the best move I ever made was going up to Southern Maine.
And for someone who's never been there, like I'm always curious in like campuses, arenas, stuff like that. Obviously, like I know the SUNY this whatever division it was the SUNY and where
Yeah.
Oswego was and everything. And then I also know the ECAC as well, like where Elmira, like you had back then you had Manhattanville, you had Newman, all of them. But like, what was the campus like in Southern Maine? How was the facilities? And obviously you ended up, playing there for the next 3 years and obviously seemed to get some games, which is good, but you also put up some points. So obviously you seem to enjoy, the playing aspect as well.
Yeah. So, man, I'm just trying to think. Portland, Maine is unbelievable. I don't know how familiar you are with that city, but it's an unbelievable city. It's like a smaller version of Boston. Great restaurants, great bars, has a good college feel, but also like a great tourist town. Um, right on the water in Maine. So that was really cool. Like I lived in Portland for two of the 3 years, which was a lot of fun. The campus is beautiful, has a very nice rink on campus, Olympic size sheet, which was a little bit of a change from the domes at Elmira. But yeah, beautiful rink on campus. Um, yeah, and when I got there, one of the reasons that I chose going there, I was looking at three different schools and I picked Southern Maine. They were seventh in the nation at the time. They played in a really good division with like Norwich and Babson, UMass Boston. So really good Division III schools that were competing for national championships. Um, and like I said, the head coach, he didn't promise me, to be a top four defenseman right away, but he said, you'll get an opportunity to play, and what you do with that opportunity is up to you. And that's all I wanted. I just wanted a fair shake. And once I got there and hit the ground running, I really had a blast and developed and ended up being the captain my senior year. And, we never reached being seventh in the nation again. But, um, the experience was unbelievable. The playing time was unbelievable. And I got to kick around in the SPHL for a couple years after that. And I wouldn't have done that without my chance at Southern Maine and Coach Beanie. So, um, yeah, for any guys looking at D3, Southern Maine is an unreal spot when you consider the school plus the town and the rink and the setup. It's unbelievable.
You would know this best, like just kind of talking about your passion for the D3 and the experience you had. Like I was the same way. Like I went D1 and didn't work out and I ended up transferring to Oswego. And I remember people telling me like, hey, good luck, man. Your career is over. Like, you're going to D3, like kind of like, bad talking it, but like, you know, SUNY Oswego, like Plattsburgh, like at least from our division, like they could be easily Division 1 programs. They just choose not to have the scholarship funding and all that stuff. But like I tell anyone, if you can go play D3, play because it's still good hockey. You're treated very well in the places that I've talked to people who have gone to, and also like it's a fun place to go too. Like you're still getting that college kind of experience. You're living in I say living in a bubble for 4 years or how many years, and at the end of the day, there's so many guys now moving on and like playing pro or getting into coaching or whatever. And someone like yourself, like you went and played in the SPHL for 2 years, had fun doing that. You played with my first Oswego roommate, Dan Bremner. So
Yeah,
there's probably some stories that can't be said on this thing because that guy, I have some too. But playing with
yeah.
him, like that guy was just played every shift like it was his last, like that kind of style. And I think he's coaching now still in Ronyard or something, Roanoke. And yeah, but like how like 2 years of pro hockey, you got to say you got to do it. Like, did you enjoy the experience there in Knoxville? And obviously, it's very known for its travel too. I spent 2 weeks there and luckily didn't get the shaft of that. But yeah, did you enjoy those 2 years?
It was unbelievable. It was a lot of fun. I went to camp in the coast and got cut after 2 days, 2 years in a row, and ended up in Knoxville. And you know, I say ended up in Knoxville. It was awesome. Like what a town, University of Tennessee. Um, and the experience is unbelievable. They sell out all the time. They treat you first class as far as the SPHL goes, and uh, yeah, the travel's a little crazy. Like day trips to Fayetteville is that's a wild one. We laugh all the time here in Hockey East with the way that our guys are spoiled. Um, yeah, they haven't made any of those East Coast Hockey League or SPHL trips where you just got to jump off the bus. There's a couple times the bus broke down and you didn't even you showed up for puck drop. You didn't even get there in time for warm-ups and um, just get out there and play, right? And nowadays there's a lot, especially at the Division I NCAA level. There's a lot of pampering that goes on, and you learn really quick in the East Coast Hockey League or the SPHL how to just adjust and go. But Knoxville as a town and an organization was first class, and um, I played with a UVM alum who lives right here, so I got a local teammate around, and a lot of those guys that I played with in Knoxville are doing different things, whether they're agents now or in coaching or um, various other walks of life within hockey, and it's cool to see us all separating and going on our own path, but still being a part of the game that we love.
That league, man, like as you said, it teaches you to, be happy with the things you have, the privileges you have. Because as you mentioned, like you would be bussing all day, 10 hours to play a game at night on a Friday. You would play the game, get on the bus after, eat quick, and then you would have to play the next day at 4 back at home and get back at 10 hours. Like it's just like the travel was crazy, especially where you if you're depending on what team you were on and stuff. So it really made you kind of like respect when you were in other places. And as I mentioned, I was there for 2 weeks. Luckily, our away games were our closest, which was 6 hours, and then I got to go to Germany after that, which was good. But after those 2 years there, you end up hanging them up. We all get there, and you end up transitioning to coaching. So good transition here. You end up going to Curry College, uh, good D3 program, and former guest TJ Manastersky was there at the time, and I think took you under his wing for the first couple of years there. But how was it, transitioning to coaching, and obviously how was it learning and kind of maybe shadowing and picking the brain of someone like TJ?
Yeah, I was actually going back to play again. I had an offer in Cortina in Italy to go and play, and I, I was really considering doing that. And my wife at the time was going to grad school at Northeastern and in Boston. And I remember I kind of floated the idea of going to Cortina, and she wasn't having it. And yeah, I was training in Boston and was thinking about going back to Knoxville. And I got this opportunity where the guy I was training with in Boston, his name's John Lounsbury, told me that Ryan Warsofsky had just left Curry to go down to South Carolina. And there was an assistant coaching spot at Curry, and he knew the head coach. So I went over and talked to TJ. Well, reached out to TJ and then got an interview with them. And um, yeah, ever since then, it was just I really got the itch and the bug. Like, and the one thing I'll say about TJ, which he probably doesn't remember it this way, but I remember it clear as day. I showed up from like my first day of work, and it was late summer, and he had just bought a house somewhere south of Boston, and he was moving, and I walked in, we talked for like 20 minutes, and then he kind of was like, "All right, here's what you got. The equipment just showed up. I need you to inventory it, organize it, put it away. Here's what Orsovsky was doing for recruiting. I need you to organize this, make it your own, and get ready to hit the ground running there. And yeah, the boys show up next week. So we got to start looking at what are our practices going to look like, etc." And it was like just thrown in the fire, like go, like no direction, just like here you go. You want to be a coach. And yeah, so I was equipment manager plus recruiting coordinator plus assistant coach on the first day. And you wear so many different hats. And I don't know if TJ did it by design or if his wife Lindsay was all over him about packing up the boxes and moving to the new house. But he threw me right in the deep end and had to tread water for a few weeks and get my legs under me. But it was a great experience. I learned so much under him, and he definitely set me up for success by doing that.
I can tell you from talking to him because I remember a story that he told me about when he was somewhere as an assistant. And he told me that whatever it was, they're in a game and the coach calls a timeout and they're gonna pull the goalie and do 6-on-5. The coach just like looks at him and goes, "Okay, TJ, do the play." And TJ's like what? And then like he ended up explaining it and he said he was like just kind of being thrown in the fire, but he said it was hilarious because he at first he was like writing players' numbers who weren't even like gonna be out there. Like so he was like doing it on the board and then the guys are kind of like looking at me. He told me like so he's like I was pissed so much because I really wanted that opportunity and but the coach like that's how he taught him. He was like just you learn by doing, so throw you in the fire. So it's kind of funny that he would do the same with you. So obviously I think he learned that from the coach. I can't remember where that was. That was somewhere in D3, I'm pretty sure. But um, he told me to bring up, I love this part of the podcast. I get some questions sent in from viewers. Obviously, him, it was easy to contact him. So there's two
Yep.
coming for you. But the first one is he said I should talk to you about your living arrangements in Boston.
Oh man. Um, yeah. Good and bad. Like the fact that I had a place to live and didn't have to find one is like probably the only um the only positive part of my living arrangement. So TJ, offered me the deal to come coach, and it was for a whopping $9,000 for the year. And I took it really, really quickly and happily. But uh my wife, like I said, she was my girlfriend at the time. Megan was going to school at Northeastern. She had she had been living in Boston already for 6 months or so, and she had a place. The only problem was it was in Mission Hill, which is a pretty tough part of Boston, and it was with four other females, one bathroom, and it was completely rat infested. Like it was extremely rat infested. I became a pro at taking out rats. Like all right, mice, not they're not big sewer rats, but um, yeah, I was killing mice every day. And it wasn't the best. I it did force me to spend a lot of time at the rink. I was getting out of there as much as I could and spending my time at the rink and in the office and everything else to avoid going back there every night and being in um, that scenario. But it was lucky, like I said, that I had a place to live and affordable because we had so many roommates. We converted one of the living rooms into a bedroom, so there wasn't a ton of space, but um, it was great. And I look back on it, don't know how I survived it, but I did, and we found a better place the second year occurred.
Paying your dues, man. Like, anyone who gets into coaching, I've said this multiple times, your first job or maybe a couple jobs, it's not about the money, it's about the opportunity and even the living, as you said. It was just trying to make it work, and at the end of the day, it probably was just a bed you slept in because you spend all day at the rink. So it's always funny hearing those kind of stories. It kind of makes you and shapes who you are today. And I'm sure now when players tell you about hard times or something wrong at their place, you're kind of like looking at them like you have no idea, kid. Like what I.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Like it was, yeah, it was not glorious. And I remember going down to eat at this place that's right by BU, and it's called Sunset Cantina. And you get some tacos or burritos and a margarita or two, and it's right across the street from Agganis Arena, where BU plays. And I remember just thinking like, man, I hope I could coach there one day. Like I want to be able to coach in that league. And I grew up watching Hockey East, like I said, and how cool would that be? And at the time, Jack Parker was the head coach at BU, and he was like this, bigger than life character. And you never know. At the time, I'm making $9,000 living in that apartment and stuff. And you fast forward 10 years, I'm a head coach in Hockey East. It's crazy how that happens. But yeah, I do at times when a guy comes in and complains that you know, he wanted the grass-fed protein powder instead of the whatever based protein powder. I'm like, oh my God. But yeah, it's that's just the way that it goes. But definitely paid our dues there.
And after those 2 years of paying your dues, you end up making the jump up to the D1 level there. So you end up going to AIC there for 5 years. And another school that unfortunately I didn't get to when I was in the like Atlantic Division in the middle of transferring. I didn't get to go there and play there. But I remember the program. I remember their logo. But like, how was that adjustment for you? Like, maybe new challenge, I would say. And I just looking now, I remembered a guy that went there. You had Alex Murray, who was a goalie from Burlington, so
Yeah.
my hometown. So I remember him going there. But how was it must have felt good, like getting the jump up. As we said, getting called up or getting promoted to the D1 level, and then taking what you had learned from TJ and now instituting it at the D1 level.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I was obviously getting the D1 was amazing. Obviously not making more than $9,000 a year was amazing. I was also driving the Zamboni at Curry College, so when I moved over to AIC, I didn't have to drive the Zamboni anymore, which was which is great. Um, but I went there under Gary Wright, and again, a teammate of mine from Knoxville, Mike Towns, was there as the graduate assistant with Gary Wright at AIC. And without Townsy being there, I don't think I ever would have got there, right? Like it was still, even though AIC hadn't won and it was the program was really down, like getting into D1 is such a hard thing to do. And Townsy really helped me get my foot in the door and get to AIC. And yeah, we didn't win a lot of games that first year. And after a long career, Gary Wright, who was the head coach, who's actually a Vermont alum, he stepped down. He retired from coaching. And I had a spring where me and Townsy really didn't know if we were going to have a job. Like I was 1 year into Division 1, and I remember calling TJ and being like, "Hey man, like I might be coming back to Curry. Like I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know who they're going to hire here at AIC. I don't know if he's going to want to keep me around." And I got really lucky that they hired Eric Lang, and I got really lucky that Eric kept me around. And yeah, that was a transformative 5 years in my coaching career. Was working for Gary and learning from him, and then working for Eric, and what we were able to do with that program and push it to where it was at um, was unbelievable. And but that changeover from D3 to D1 was wild, and it was again another just kind of pushed into the deep end because it's a whole new beast. And um, the one thing I will say is that TJ did set me up for success when I got there. I was able to hit the ground running at AIC, which a lot of that credit's due to TJ for sure.
You mentioned like that program, like you guys, you were there for 5 years and you guys got a tournament appearance in 2019 there. So obviously you guys had success and were able to kind of build and have improvement every year. Unfortunately, they just lost their D1 program there, which but I saw their coach there. Now he's going to the RPI, so I think that's obviously a positive for him and obviously a new challenge. And RPI is a very good school. My good friend's dad went there and had a great time. But after AIC there, you spent 5 years there as an assistant. You end up going to Vermont where you are now, but first as an assistant coach. So, getting to that Hockey East, as you mentioned, like a goal of yours was to get there as a head coach. You get your foot in the door as an assistant coach. You were there with a guy I used to work with, Jeff Hill, who was in Mannheim a year ago, and another goalie guy. Very funny, very energetic. A lot of funny stories with him. But um, Vermont, like when I think at school, like the Catamounts, like just the logo, like you get the Tim Thomas and stuff like that. Like it takes me back there. But um, did you feel like when you made that transition after having like kind of 5 years under your belt at the D1 level as an assistant, that it was like, it's a new challenge, but it wasn't like, kind of like getting thrown in the deep end again. Like you were kind of, hey, I know what to do. Like let's just go, and it was kind of like a smooth transition for you.
Yeah, I would say that one was way smoother. And again, the credit for that one goes to Eric Lang. Like I just, being the associate head coach for him and how much trust he put in me in the program at AIC. And, when we got there, that program was dead last in every category possible. And when I left, we got done winning back-to-back championships in Atlantic hockey. And then after I left, they won two more. So I think it was, um, yeah, our second recruiting class only won championships while they were at AIC, which is crazy. Like that, I don't know how often that's happened, but there was a class that went through there that won a championship every year they were there, which is insane. And obviously, you mentioned we went to the tournament and we beat St. Cloud. We lost to Denver in the next round, and um, you know, leaving AIC, it wasn't an easy decision. I was associate head coach. I loved my role. I loved working with Eric. I had learned so much from him in terms of leadership and building a culture and really building a Division One program. And I felt like I had a good blueprint for how that could work. Now the trick was moving over to Hockey East, and that's no knock on Atlantic hockey, but it was a different beast in terms of recruiting, right? And going toe to toe with Boston College and Providence and BU, and you can name the list of schools. It was you were in the top league in college hockey, and I was brought here to be the primary recruiter, and um, I owe Todd Woodcroft for bringing me here and giving me that opportunity, and it was it was pretty seamless in terms of knowing what we had to do, and knowing what the standard had to be, and the recruiting and having the network built up of different agents and coaches throughout junior hockey and who to lean on. And so that was the kind of the difference between D3 to D1 was going D3 to D1. I had to learn all that, like how did the recruiting work? The rules were different. Who were the agents to lean on? Who were the advisors? Who were the different coaches and the different programs that were going to help set you up? Whereas moving to Hockey East just kind of gave us access to a higher level player, a higher caliber of player that maybe we couldn't obtain while we were at AIC. Um, and learning from a guy that spent time in the NHL. And you mentioned Jeff Hill. We call him the Hill Cat around here, affectionately. Um, he's got a sandwich named after him downtown at a restaurant called Handy's. He's uh, he's the man. And that guy made my life really smooth. And we only worked together for a year before he jumped over to Europe. And I think he went to the Swiss League first. I can't remember which team, but um, yeah, he really helped me like learn because he played here and he coached here. He knew Vermont, like he knew everything, the ins and outs, down to like, where's the right place to go grab a cup of coffee, but also, um, if you want to get something through admissions faster, who are you talking to and who's the compliance person? And those are things you need to know as an assistant coach at the Division I level. And he just sped up my learning process. And we had a blast. We had Mark Stewart on our staff, who's an assistant coach with Edmonton right now. We had Eric Elens on our staff, who's a video coach for Edmonton right now. And we had a great assistant group and just had an absolute blast. But I owe Hilly a lot for teaching me the ins and outs of Vermont and getting me up to speed. So he made that transition really quick.
Yeah, I only worked with Jeff for about 3, 4 months, but just in the short time I did, you could see how, hardworking he was and how he was kind of that guy. Like, if you needed something, he would either know it or he would find it out really quick because he just had that kind of base to him where, you always got to have answers and stuff like that. So I'm happy, I think he's in Utah's system now as a goalie development. So
Yep.
happy that he's working in the pro ranks still. You end up spending three years as an assistant, and then you get to become a head coach. And I always like talking to people who become a head coach for the first time. Like, did you feel you were ready for that transition, that responsibility? Because a lot of people will say like, "Hey, I thought I was ready," and then now looking back, it's like maybe I wasn't, or you don't realize like how much more responsibility it actually is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, obviously my transition into being a head coach wasn't a normal one. And y- you know, being told or that I was going to be the interim head coach, shocking, but also um, I'm a pretty confident guy. And I think the reason for my confidence was related to Vermont. I had known the program, I knew the university, I knew the players, um, and I kind of knew what we were doing right and what we were doing wrong, and how, if I was the head coach, how I would want to put my mark on it and push it forward and get it back to where it belongs. And the only thing for me is like, I think I was lucky in the sense that Scott Mosier stayed. He's our associate head coach now. He was an assistant coach with me under Todd Woodcroft, and that gave me a ton of confidence in terms of like a running mate, like a guy to do this with and to attack every day with. And um, Scott was um, yeah, monumental in the, especially in that first couple weeks, because he had options to leave and go to other D1 schools as an assistant. Um, and he ended up staying here with me, and it was kind of one of those things that I knew I had a sounding board. I had somebody I could lean on in the day-to-day grind. And then our administration is both UVM hockey alums. Jeff Schulman, Joe Gervais are kind of the top of our program, and they both graduated and played hockey at the University of Vermont. So when you have that kind of backing from the top and that support structure, it definitely helped my transition into being a head coach. And it felt like I had the wind at my back because of that support and the support of our team and our players. And yeah, definitely felt like it helped me hit the ground running. But as you alluded to, there were some other stressors and some new stresses that I wasn't prepared for, and you could never maybe be prepared for unless you sit in the head coaching seat. So um, it was nice to have a support structure to help me with those stresses as I transitioned from assistant to head coach.
Yeah, your support staff is obviously so key, and maybe in a lot of cases they don't get enough credit for how much they actually do. And you put it to a lot of times through your coaching career, you've just kind of been thrown in the fire or into the deep end, and that's kind of what it is when to be a head coach, because you don't. Everyone can tell you what to expect or their own version of it, but until you go through it, you really don't have the full idea of the weight it carries or the day-to-day things, and maybe things that you didn't think you had to deal with that you actually have to deal with or make decisions on. Um, so second question from a fan, aka TJ. Um, he told me to ask you about the rattle jar and how it impacts your assistant coaches now.
Well, I forgot about that. I actually forgot about this. And that is no lie. I completely forgot that I did that to him. Um, and I 100%, I wish Scotty and Brendan were in here right now. They would tell you that they should make a rattle jar. It was a really good idea that that me and the other assistant at Dave Breen, who's with the Boston Bruins now, had it. Curry. Anytime TJ would just do one of those head coaching things, like just you know throw us on a wild rabbit chase down a rabbit hole that we knew wasn't going to come to fruition, or making us call that kid that was so clearly going to go to North Dakota. Like, why am I calling this kid? He's not coming to Curry. Or, um, just being a stickler on a tiny, 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 minute detail that the assistants had missed. Um, we would just shake the jar at him, and he had to put the money in. And then it transformed into anytime I was getting frustrated with him, I would put the money in. And at the end of the year, me and the other assistants were going to go grab a wobbly pop downtown in Boston, and talk about how the rattle jar grew so big from all the things that TJ was frustrating us with. But that's definitely part of being a head coach, and I haven't been sitting in the seat long enough. I think I do some things every once in a while, and I'll throw my hand up and be like, yeah, that's I listen, I know I just whatever I just said definitely pissed you guys off, and you think I'm crazy right now. And they don't have a rattle jar, at least that I know about. Maybe they have one on the side. I'll ask them when they pop in here. But yeah, we needed one with TJ, because he would go off the rails. Like the guy would do some things that we had to be like, what are we doing right now? And it was a lot of fun though. Like he was great about it. He would say something, and as he's walking out the door, he'd be like, grab the rattle jar and then just close the door. So um, he leaned into it and had fun with it. But yeah, he brought that up about a month ago, and I had forgot that was even a thing. So yeah, we had definitely had fun together.
I'm gonna have to bring up because his assistant at Brock is a Burlington guy who's a year younger than me, and I think I'll see him tomorrow night. So I'm gonna have to bring it up and be like, hey, do you got the rattle jar at Brock there? How full's it get? So, but that's funny. I mean, that adds to the bond, I would say, and also as players, you spend so much time with the guys every day, and back when we played, it was your class. You were spending 4 years with those guys. So it's the same with coaches. Like you're spending even more hours together all the time. So you got to have those fun moments, those things that keep it, light and loose. And that's a good one. I'll have to keep that in mind for future for maybe for our coaches. I'll say, for Dallas Eakins there, we need a rattle jar or something in case he sends us. But I have stories like that too. Like teams I worked on, it was like we're trying to get a player in pro hockey, and they're telling me you should talk to this guy, and I'm like, he has 500 AHL games. He makes 300,000. You think he's coming to this place for 40? Like, are you like, you know what I mean? But it's just like you got to do it because it's like you got to please the uppers, and you just feel like an idiot making that call. Like as you said, you're trying to get a guy to come to Curry who's probably going to Nodak. You're just like, hey,
Yeah, and I'm calling. He's in the BCHL, like, and we're in Boston. It's like, how many D3 schools does he have to pass by from Western Canada to get to Curry, south of Boston? It's like, it just didn't. And that kid did end up D1, and it's like, I think that's part of it too. Like that was part of it with TJ was purposely trying to make us uncomfortable and keep us on our edge. And he did take developments here. That's one thing I've been so lucky in my coaching career. The guys that I was assistants for really took developing me and the rest of their staff seriously, like as coaches. Like TJ, Gary Wright, and Eric Lang, like their coaching tree is I mean, TJ's first assistant was Ryan Warsofsky. The guy just won a gold medal as the head coach for Team USA in the men's world championships. Um, it's crazy that I got lucky that way. Even Gary Wright, like I said, we didn't win a lot of games when I was with Gary, but he taught me some really big time coaching lessons that just about not making excuses and finding a way to yes and doing more with less. And you couldn't tell Gary no. Like that first year at AIC, we didn't have any bells and whistles. We were playing in a public town rink. Um, I mean, the locker room didn't even have a bathroom or shower in it. It was crazy. But if you told Gary no, there was no telling him no. He was going to pester you until you found a way to yes. And that's just stuck with me, and obviously all the things I learned from Eric too. I do consider myself lucky to sometimes you just find the right guys, and you're able to work with the right guys. And even Todd, when I got here, I mean, he gave me ownership of so many areas of the Vermont program, and I didn't know him, beforehand, and him hiring me away from AIC. I've been lucky to work with the guys that I have.
I think that's one of the good things about like North American hockey in a sense is like no one's like fearing or thinking that like someone's going to backstab them in a sense. Like they're just very open with, hey, I've been doing this here for these many years, or this is what I've learned along the way, or I worked with so and so and he did this. And they're just happy to share their knowledge and, express to you what they have learned, what they think is successful. And at the end of the day, we're all trying to create our own recipe. I think as coaches, you take a little bit from here, you take a little bit from there, and you create your own recipe, and that's your philosophy. So I always like hearing stories like that where people are just, happy to take you under their wing and try to grow your knowledge even more and give you the experiences too to kind of get, by doing things. That's how you learn, right?
For sure. And when you're a young assistant coming up, having ownership of the program, like feeling like you're not just um an add-on, that like that that ownership piece is everything. And I always felt that with the guys that I've worked for and under. So um, yeah, just lucky, honestly, because I definitely know that there's other guys in the coaching world that haven't had that kind of luck and work with the right guys and happen kind of yeah, it just kind of happened for me, which was extremely positive.
Speaking of, we were talking about before, like you or your funny recruiting stories. Now that you're the head coach at the University of Vermont there, like one, what types of players are you looking to recruit? Like what attributes would you say or characteristics of the players, you want to have at Vermont, like the maybe the characteristics or the defining words that the team would represent, whether it's in the community or how you guys play. And the second part of this question would be with the new rules, obviously major junior players being now eligible to come to NCAA, how has that maybe changed your recruiting process? Obviously, I think it's added more work to your plate because there's a lot more players to look at. But yeah, maybe touch on those two questions.
Yeah, I think the first one for us, we had every recruit that comes through campus, we clearly define for them, our value system, our culture, what our beliefs are, our non-negotiables as a program, and our on-ice identity. Like those, we make sure they walk away from every recruit trip with those three things. The one that we talk about openly and outwardly with everybody is just um, we say we want to be intense, fast, and fun. Like those are the three things. As players, uh, we're looking for those type of players. We're looking for those type of people. That's who we want to be surrounded by, especially like even down to our coaching staff. Maybe we're not the fastest people anymore, but I'm from New York. I guess I talk kind of fast, but um, and just yeah, that's what we want to be a part of every single day. People that enjoy being intense, um, but know how to have fun at the same time. And you know, g- getting to that intense, fast, and fun was a process. And I owe Scotty Mosier a lot. Like, and I know I talked about him briefly already, but um, when we first found out that we were going to be running the program and I was the interim coach, you build out a binder as a head coach of what your beliefs are going to be and kind of an action plan and your staff. And in there, one of the things that I had was what is a catamount? Like, what is a catamount? Like, if we can't define it as a staff, how are the players going to know and who are we looking for? And we talked, me, him, and Brendan talked for days about it. And finally, Scott just said, like, maybe we don't know. Like, like this is our first year as a staff together. Maybe we don't know yet. Maybe we should coach for a year. And if we do our job and we get a long-term contract, maybe we'll know in the springtime. And I agreed with him, and then I forgot about it. And last spring, he came to me and was like, "Hey, we got to define what a catamount is. Like, let's knock our heads together. Like, we didn't just put that on the shelf and forget about it." Um, and it was really clear after a year, intense, fast, and fun. It's who we want to be surrounded by. That's the players we're trying to recruit. That's who we go after. We recruit to that identity. We play to that identity. We practice to that identity, and we're on our way to making that a mainstay at Vermont hockey. And then the flip, the second part was it just how is the CHL impacting the recruiting and how have we been navigating that? Is that what you
Yeah,
asked?
yeah, I'm just curious, like, obviously now it's opened a new window of to players that never were available. So I'm wondering, like, how you guys have been handling it, navigating it, and also like, I've asked coaches like what their opinion is, and I've gotten mixed reviews. I've got coaches that have told me I think it's great for hockey because now it opens up, more avenues. I wish we had that when we played. I know I can say that. Um, and then I have coaches that say they don't like it because hockey was such a unique sport opposed to like football and basketball, where you had so many different avenues to get to the NHL. You had European players going Europe to NHL. You had the OHL route. You had the NCAA route, and then you had the other route of like guys who never really should have a chance, but they just like kind of work their way up. And like I know personally for me, like after like talking to people about it, the one thing I don't like about it is I feel that, and this goes into the portal as well. And obviously you have more experience than me, but I just think like athletes today kind of have like if they go to a school and they're not getting playing time, they can just kind of like cop out, take the easy way out and change. And it's okay versus when we went to school, most times you're 4 years with these guys. And like as you said, like you had the meeting with your coach being like, I want to get better. And like you had to work your ass off to do that. And then eventually it came to the point where he said, look, you're not going to play here, so you can go somewhere else. You know what I mean? So like that's where I'd say I'm so mixed on it. So that's where I'm just kind of curious, like, how has it changed for things for you? And like, what's your opinion on the overall rule change?
Yeah, I think just in general, you're right. Like players have more choices than they ever had. Um, they have more weapons at their disposal than they ever had with the transfer portal, and even the way that some of them come up through youth hockey and switching teams every year, and junior hockey jumping up, jumping ship and switching teams and everything else. And um, you know, Nick Saban has a really good one on this. That you could Google it, YouTube it. It's a quick press conference that he did, and it was about the illusion of choice. Um, and he said like these kids are coming up these days, and they have this illusion of choice that if they just the grass is greener on the other side, and if they just switch, it'll be easier. And um, the truth of the matter, like he says, is like you don't have a lot of choices if you want to be great. Like you could switch. You could go from UNH to UVM, whatever it is. You could go from Bowling Green to Mankato. Um, when you get there, the reality is it takes what it takes to be a champion. It takes what it takes to become a pro hockey player. Um, and that's never going to change just by changing your scenery. So I think guys are starting to learn that a little bit. That this transfer portal thing was cool and new, but you switch schools or you change your scenery through youth hockey or junior hockey. When you get there, it still takes what it takes, and that's never going to change. And the buy-in and the belief and the effort and the work ethic and the sacrifice, it's the same no matter where you go if you want to be successful. So um, I agree with you that they have a lot of choice, but there's an illusion there too that they got to work through. For us in the CHL, we've gone into it. I think the rule change has restructured the landscape of Division One, and I'm speaking solely from like Hockey East, and what we're recruiting against and who we're recruiting. Um, I think we have some really good players on our team right now that came from the NAHL, and they played in the NAHL, and they're good players for us. And then this incoming class has zero null players, not one. And all of our team is coming from the CHL or the USHL, the whole thing. So, it's just, again, it's restructured. It took the pool of players and it widened it by three whole leagues, which is crazy. That's so many players getting dumped in to the recruiting pool. And do we know exactly how it's going to translate? No, we don't know exactly how it's going to translate coming over from, the Q or the O and coming to Hockey East. But for us, what we've done is we've made sure that um, we recruit to that identity and we look for guys that fit that identity within the major junior leagues and make sure that they have intense, fast, and fun inside of them as people and game and inside of their game. And then they have all different kinds of dynamic skills. Some of them are big time goal scorers. Some of them are more of your fast, straight ahead, intense guys. And um, we've had all different types of players come from the CHL, and then we got some high end guys coming from the USHL still. We're excited about our USHL players that are coming in. So um, it maybe has restructured the recruiting a little bit. We have future guys that are going to go play in the Q or the O next year, rather than those guys usually would be going to the USHL, BCHL, or the NAL, and they're probably not going to touch those leagues now. So it's restructured everything, but I think I think it's for the best. I think that um, those players should have the opportunity to play. A lot of guys get done with their major junior career and get thrust right into pro hockey before they're ready for it. And I think there's going to be a lot of tweeners that maybe just didn't get their NHL entry level deal and now have an option for the next 3 or 4 years to come and play at a really high level inside of Hockey East and get a second chance at earning that contract rather than having to go in the coast and slug it out. And I'm sure you've played with a bunch of guys that have fizzled out over that, and maybe this gives them a longer runway. And it's definitely hurt some guys. There's some guys that won't get to Division 1 now because of that. But overall, I do believe it's a good thing.
Yeah, no, you raise a lot of good points there, and I am very curious. Like you said, it's kind of like the shiny new toy. So I think we can't really have a full opinion on it for maybe like 5 to 10 years, see how it goes. Like you mentioned too, the portal is what used to be the shiny new toy, and now guys maybe are kind of realizing what we're talking about. And I will say for the listeners, like there's obviously scenarios out there where an athlete might not be getting a fair chance and having the ability to change and get a new scenery. It doesn't mean they're not working hard where they are. It doesn't mean they won't work hard where they're going. It just means like, sometimes, I can speak from experience where I wasn't getting a chance that I needed. I had to go D3 to get it, and it ended up saving my career. So I totally understand that point of it. But with talking to people, I do think that there probably are some athletes out there that instead of battling through the adversity, now they know that they can just transfer so easily or whatever. So, like anything, there's pros and cons. I don't think there's ever like a strict yes, this is right or no, it's wrong. You can make an argument for either. But um, two more for you. We've been going for about an hour here. It's been awesome. One thing you got to do, which I think is always cool as a coach, is you got to coach internationally. So you were with the U20 team there in Norway. I played a year in Norway, so I was trying to look up some of the names. If I remember some of these kids from when they were like 14 years old, most of them would grow up in the Oslo area. That's kind of where they started. But how did that kind of opportunity come about, and how was your experience?
Again, one unbelievable experience, but two, lucky that I was working for Todd, and he had international connections and he pushed me towards taking that job. One, he was able to facilitate the connection for me. Um, I had booked the speakers for our national convention down in Florida every year for the NCAA coaches convention, and I got Tobias Johansson to come and speak at that. So I already knew him, but very loosely, just from having him come down and speak. And then Todd was able to, he knew Toby, and he knew that Toby needed a D and penalty kill coach. And I think a lot of head coaches wouldn't want their assistants to be away from the team for, yeah, I think it was 2.5, 3 weeks, right? But he told me, one, hey, Toby's looking for a D and penalty kill coach. Two, I could get you in there. I'm tight with Toby. You should do this. And, Norway, I have no connection to Norway, like nationality wise or anything. And obviously for Team USA, that would have been something I jumped at, right? But going to a country that I didn't know, I didn't speak the language, and I definitely like went back and forth. And Todd pushed me and was like, "This is going to help grow your game. You're going to learn a different type of game." And I ended up taking it, and it was an unreal experience. Like Toby's now running the men's world team. On the staff was John Riley, who's with Tampa Bay now. At the time, he was with Philly. So I made two really good connections there. And again, by luck, the players that came up through Norway at that time were really good. And one of the kids I had in that tournament just got drafted in the first round. His name was Stian Solberg. I think he maybe played a little bit in the AHL this year and played in Sweden, I think, after that time in Norway. But I learned a whole new game. I learned what it was like to compete in the World Juniors, which was unbelievable. It's like a hockey factory. You eat, sleep, and breathe it for, you know, 2 weeks straight. It's nonstop. You get really tight with the staff that you're with. You'll learn a lot of things. You get tight with other staffs that are coaching there. Um, and you meet some cool people along the way and coach some really high end players. And funny enough, we did commit a kid out of that from Norway to Vermont. Um, and he committed and was coming to play here. And under the old rules, he ended up getting deemed ineligible. But under the new rules, he would have been fine. And he got deemed ineligible because he played with professional players, but he never made more than, I think he made like $5,000 a year, which is obviously for like his food and his travel and stuff, which is a necessary expense. In today's day and age, he would have been fine. He would be like a junior within our team this year. And back then he got whacked by the NCAA and never get to come over to Vermont. But yeah, it was a really cool experience. We came in second, and then Norway eventually won the gold the next year and moved up to the top division, which was really cool to watch those guys do. But yeah, great experience. O Todd for that one, O Toby, um, and Riles for taking me on with Norway and had an absolute blast.
I tell anyone, anytime you can coach internationally, doesn't matter what country, like it's such a good experience, looks good on the resume, and you learn so much more about different cultures and the way that they see the game. And I was just at the World Championships a couple weeks ago, so I saw Norway play, and that Solberg, like right away, like I looked at him, I'm like, this guy doesn't look like a Norwegian, like he kind of looks North American. And then I Googled him and saw he was drafted and had played in North America this year, so like he had some bite to his game, which I thought was obviously important. You can tell he had played in North America, as I said, but um, yeah, the old rules. So we're dealing with this now. Like we have young German players who want to keep their eligibility for NCAA. And I remember like when I played Norway, I had a guy and he was like he was supposed to go to I think Northern Michigan or maybe Michigan Tech. Like he was really smart and wanted to go, but then same thing because he had played
Yeah.
a certain amount of games or whatever it was, they deemed him ineligible. And I feel bad for them because it's not like over in some of these countries, like they don't have the multiple junior leagues that Canada and the States have. So like to them, it's like you play U20 and then it's like, what do you do? Do you try to get to North America? And if you can't get over, then it's like, okay, I'm going to go play pro. And some of these kids play pro at a younger age because they're dominating the U20 level. So it's better for them to go play with men. So I wish they would figure out something.
Solberg's a good example of that. Like we really recruited him heavy to come here and play at Vermont. But what ended up happening for him was, and I remember talking to him and his dad, it was, what are we going to do for the next 2 or 3 years before we get to Vermont, right? Like they couldn't understand and trying to explain to a Norwegian kid who's really good, obviously turns into a first round NHL draft pick, explain to him that like, well, you could come over here and play prep hockey in New England. Like he was like, what? Like I'm playing pro hockey in Norway already. Why would I come over and play prep hockey in the US, right? It was, and that was the hardest part, was connecting the dots on how to get to Vermont. And um, I think that has now become easier with the rule change, which is great because the other kid that we had, he was playing it for Norway. His name was Sander Angerbrotten, and he would have had no problem coming to Vermont, and he was a little older than Stian was, so he could have came right in. But again, was playing that pro level in Norway because they're the best players in Norway, and the youth hockey and the junior level just they surpassed it by 15 or 16. They were just too good for it. So their options were to go leave home and play junior hockey, maybe in Sweden or the US. But maybe that's not the right thing for some of these kids. And the right thing is to be able to stay home, play with the top team, but not be compensated like a pro hockey player and continue to develop against men and then eventually come over to the US and play in the NCAA. So for the Europeans, I think the rule change made a lot of sense.
Hmm. No, I definitely agree. And I'm happy they were able to do that. As I said, we're dealing with that too, like with the young kids, and it's just like finding the right amount where they can still be insured, but it's not too much over the limit. So, but yeah, I'm happy the rule changed. Obviously, there's been a couple rule changes since me and you played that I wish existed then, but for the good of the game, I guess. Last one for you here. I always end on this one. Like to pick my guest brains on it. So, what is one piece of advice or multiple pieces of advice you would give the younger generation out there? So if you're speaking to kids who are, 16, 17 years old looking for advice, what's one or multiple pieces of advice you would give them?
Yeah, you mean for players that are looking to make it to pro hockey or college or whatever it may be?
Whatever it may be, like looking back on kind of your experience as someone that maybe wants to have a career in hockey, whether that's playing, coaching, or even just take the next level, like a AAA kid trying to get to junior, whatever. Like I just think in general, like there's always me and you, have been doing this a while. We can look back and be like, hey, like these are things I would focus on, or this is what I would do if I could do it again.
Yeah, I think for players trying to make it to, I'll just use like the Hockey East level or the University of Vermont. It's, when we go out into the rinks, we're obviously looking for those three things that we talked about: intense, fast, and fun. But, you know, we're looking for guys that fit a puzzle piece. So whatever you're good at, be the absolute best version of that. Like crank the volume on that to max, If that means you're a goal scorer, well, then go be the best goal scorer possible. If that means you're a shutdown D, well, then be the best shutdown D on the ice. You're the fastest guy, well, then you better blow everybody out of the water, right? Like, what puzzle piece is this guy? And I think, I wish that somebody had told me that when I was coming up. And obviously, I had a late start to ice hockey and played Division 3, but through junior A and stuff. If anybody would have said that's what somebody was looking for when they were recruiting, I think that would have helped me a lot. I would have, because I was always trying to, I was a defensive shutdown defenseman, but I'm working on my hands and I'm working on, my playmaking. And it's like, yeah, you need that to a certain level. There's a base layer of skill that you need to play at a high level. But if I would have known just turning myself into a tank that can fly really fast and shut everybody down was going to give me a better chance at making it to the Division 1 level, I probably would have done that, and um, you go into the rinks as a player, you don't really know what the scouts or the coaches are ever looking for. So obviously it's different for every program, but that's one thing that we're looking for. And then coaching wise, I mean, it's cliche to say it. And I think it's easy for me to say it, but it's, chase the dream, not the money. I mean, um, that's the name of the game. And everybody that's, maybe not everybody in the world, but most guys that are coaching in the NHL or coaching in Division 1 or in Europe, at some point they paid their dues. And um, if you have that itch and it's a passion of yours, the money won't matter as much, and the money will come. Like, it's about learning the ins and outs of the business, and coaching it requires action. And if you don't have the passion for it, that's the one thing about coaching that I've found is it has a really um, organic way of weeding out the pretenders. You can't make it to the pro level or the NCAA Division 1 level if you're not all in, and you got to be all in on that dream in order to ever have a chance of really obtaining it. So, yeah, I know I threw a cliche at you, but that'd be my two pieces of advice.
I mean, the second one, like it's cliche, but it's so true because at the end of the day, like you got to pay your dues, you got to grind to make it, and that doesn't matter if in whatever it is. That's in real world jobs, that's in sports jobs, that's in playing sports, whatever it is. So, as you said, it does really weed out the guys who are maybe not in it or hoping for like, hey, if I do this for a year or two, then I'll get the big paycheck. Like sometimes, I can speak from experience. It took me 6 years, 7 years to finally say where comfortable, but like still, I still think I can get a ways up or climb the ladder more. But it was still there was years there. It was tough, especially during Corona, where teams in Europe didn't have money, so you're just taking whatever they'll give you to have the chance to keep it on the resume, to keep your name out there. And you said it best. And then yeah, I really agreed with your, if you're a player and you're something you're really good at, like obviously you want to try to add as much to your basket as you can and like have like maybe a baseline. But if you're really good at one thing, like take pride in that and make sure that you'll continue to be the best in that, whatever that skill is. So that's how you stand out. I definitely agree with that as well. Hey man, we had a good one here. I appreciate you doing this. Like it was awesome to talk to you. TJ said like, when I had him on, he's like, you gotta get one of my assistants on that I had, and I'm glad we finally worked it out. You were able to get the mail there out of the junk mail. So I was happy we
Yep.
found it. But hey, appreciate you taking the time, and best of luck next season there in Vermont.
No, thanks, Andrew. It was a blast talking to you. And um, yeah, if you ever need anything from me, just let me know because I really enjoyed my time here.
Happy you liked going down memory lane, and yeah, now we got the contact info, so it's all about growing the network. But thanks again. And for those listening, if you're ever in the Vermont area, you want to see some good hockey, go check a game out. Check them out on all social media, as everyone's got it today. Good clips on there. And as always, until next week, cheers and ciao.